Alright, my name is Joe Bennett. I'm here with Simone and Shannon Chandley, and we're going to ask you a couple questions.
So let's start right away. So you have 4 children, and I was wondering, did they all go through the Amherst school system? And what are your thoughts on the school system, and where do you think there's improvement needed?
I have my 4 children. 3 of them have graduated from Souhegan High School, and my oldest began in the Amherst school system in 7th grade. My Isaiah began in the Amherst school system around 2nd grade, and the other 2 went the whole time. I do have a son who is a junior who is not at Souhegan, a junior in high school who's not at Souhegan. I can tell you that I love the Amherst school system. I've been very, very happy with it. I could probably do commercials for Souhegan. I do commercials for Souhegan, not formally, but when I'm out talking to people about what a terrific school we have, Souhegan is it. I think there's so many good things about this school, and so many ways in which it prepares students to go out into the world after, in college in particular, but certainly in other areas. Souhegan will have prepared you well. As far as areas where we can improve, there's probably always room for improvement. There's probably always room for improvement. We could perhaps make sure that our students coming through the entire school system are their curriculum is lined up, so that kids who come from other schools can come into our system and know we can have a good idea of whether or not they are prepared for the grade they're in and how to help people catch up. But in terms of the education that my children received, I'm very, very happy, and I wouldn't necessarily change anything in particular. I think the experiential learning is particularly important, and bringing that down into the lower grades would be great. The other thing that I think would be a real plus for the lower grades is to have languages, teach foreign languages. I would love to see us teaching whether it's Spanish, French, American Sign Language, any other language, starting in the earlier grades and going all the way through to high school.
You've presented a strong interest in preserving the environment in the past. What are you hoping to do as a state rep to change the current system?
Well, one of the things that we absolutely have to look to do is to invest in renewable energy and other such technologies. I think that our energy costs in New Hampshire are high. It makes sense. We have cold winters, we have warm summers, we use a lot of energy, our costs are high. Renewable technology is important, both in terms of our economy and creating, making our state attractive for businesses, but also in terms of preserving our environment, investing more in solar energy, upping the net metering cap, or perhaps lifting the cap. I need to look more at how we handle that, but I think certainly investments in solar energy would be important.
Another issue that I noticed you were particularly vocal on is sexual assault. How do you plan to sort of end that in the high schools and colleges in New Hampshire?
Well, we in New Hampshire are fortunate that our domestic violence law and most of our laws regarding sexual assault are quite strong and good, very good laws. I was active in passing Joshua's law. I was a co-sponsor and advocated for it in the House. Joshua's law created the domestic violence statute. Prior to that, an assault would have been charged as just assault without a domestic violence statute. Having the statute helps us to recognize patterns of behavior in different families, and it also helps law enforcement, so when they respond to a call, they know that that this home may have a history of domestic violence. It's not just a simple assault or a stranger assault. As far as how do we deal with what some might call a rape culture in our communities, it is important to educate young people to prevention. And the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence has a very good prevention program that it is using in some school systems and working with a lot of colleges and universities to educate both men and women to what sexual assault is, what kinds of behaviors are not acceptable, and how to recognize warning signs if you're in a situation that may lead to sexual assault.
In 2014, you ran for a state rep and were not elected. What's different this year, and what is pulling you back?
I love the work. I served from 2000, I was elected in 2008. I served 2008 to 2010. I lost in 2010, and I ran again in 2012, was elected 2012, served until 2014. In 2014, I lost by a very, very narrow margin. And it was a little bit interesting because there were two candidates on the Democratic side, three candidates on the Republican side. People had a choice to vote for 3 of the 5 candidates. And there was a less than, I believe it was less than 1% difference between the top vote getter and the number 4 vote getter. So from the top vote getter to me was less than 1%. Given that the margin was so close, I thought it's worth trying again. I was the top vote getter in 2012. I had been the top vote getter. So it isn't, the margin between winning and losing at this level is can be very slim. Of course, I wouldn't do this if I didn't love the work. I love serving the people of Amherst and serving the state of New Hampshire. The policy work.
Could you talk a little bit about how you plan to work with your opponents if elected?
Mm-hmm. I've worked with Republicans from Amherst and from Amherst and Milford before, because the first time I ran, our district was Amherst and Milford. And the first time I was the only Democrat elected, and there were 7 Republicans, and I were elected to represent Amherst Milford. The last time, it was 2 Republicans and I were elected to represent Amherst, and another person represented the Flotarial district. And she was a Republican. And one of the first things I did in both cases was invite all of my fellow reps, all of the people who had also been elected, to come to my house. I put that invitation out and said, come for coffee, come for, I had a little party one night and I just invited them all. And for the I'm not sure that anyone chose to come, but I think that by reaching out, I made it clear that I was willing to work with them, because ultimately we're all representing Amherst, and we are not representing the Democrats in Amherst or the Republicans in Amherst. We're representing our constituents in Amherst, and that's everybody. So each of us represents all of Amherst, and I think it's important that where we can work together on a common goal, we should. I think the best example of that would be the bridge bill. I don't know if you've heard about that, but the bridge, there were many red-listed bridges in the state of New Hampshire. We really needed to address our crumbling infrastructure. 2 of those red-listed bridges were in Amherst, and one of them was the bridge that is right outside of the village on right where Old Manchester Road and Mack Hill Road come together. And that bridge was red-listed and closed for several years. I should be able to tell you the number of days because I did know it at one time. But the bridge was closed, and it had been identified as being eligible for certain state funds. But the state funds would not be available until 2018. So one of our Republican representatives and I worked very closely to get those funds secured so that they would be released to the town as needed, rather a certain reimbursement, and that it would be done in a timely fashion. And I think the fact that there were two of us working very closely on it, and both of us advocating within our own caucuses helped that to pass, because people said, you know, I could go to the Democratic caucus and say, this is a good bill and this is why. And my colleague could go to his Republican caucus and say the same thing, and together we could, again, find the best bill and do the best work for the people of Amherst.
Here at Souhegan, our community council is in the midst of discussing a proposal concerning gender-neutral bathrooms. Where do you stand on the proposal?
I think it is the way you're probably ahead of the rest of most of our other communities, and it's where I think we're going. I think it's absolutely a reasonable proposal. People should be able to use the bathroom of the gender with which they associate, and if that means that you not have gender-identified bathrooms, I think that's okay. I don't, have you had people? Are there students who are concerned?
Yeah.
And
We wouldn't do it throughout the whole school.
Okay.
So it would be like probably a very small percentage of the bathrooms in the school, the signs would just be taken off.
so everybody would have an option.
Mhm.
For those who really feel that they wouldn't be comfortable using a bathroom with a person of another gender or another cisgender, that
They would have the choice of avoiding.
okay.
So, is there anything in particular that you want voters to keep in mind as they go out and fill out their ballots?
Yes, first thing, I do want people to remember to vote all the way down the ballot. I think that the drop-off is staggering. People come in and many voters vote for the president and they vote for the governor. Those are the first two options on your ballot. And then there's significant drop-off. And then another group will vote for the senator and the U.S. congressional rep, and then there's even more drop-off. And what I would really like to stress is that people vote all the way down the ticket and that they're knowledgeable about the candidates. I'm really glad that you're doing this because it's very difficult for down-ticket candidates to get our names out and our policies out. It's very hard for us to find a place where we can talk to voters about our positions and let them know our philosophy. You see many millions of dollars worth of commercials for the up-ticket candidates, but obviously those of us down-ticket don't have those options. So I would stress to voters, vote all the way down your
What
ballot.
accomplishment are you most proud of in your political history?
Oh, that's a good question, and you'd think I'd have a quick answer about it. But I probably don't. I guess, one thing I've referred to is my ability to work, to build consensus. I think that on a number of bills that I've worked on, both the ones that came to my committee and I would work to achieve consensus within the committee, I'd often be able to say, okay, Simone, it sounds like you're not willing to agree to this bill. What do we need to do to bring you to yes? And I would really listen to what you had to say. And if there was a way we could work together to make that bill, or as I say, that's our product. If I could find a way for us to get together and make that product best, I would do it. So building consensus is something I am very.
So right now there's a pretty serious opioid crisis in New Hampshire. What are the steps or measures that you're going to take if elected in this
Well,
issue?
they're probably, I think we have to look at it a 2 or 3 or 4 pronged approach. We know that there's the medical issue, the addiction issue. Addiction is a disease. People who are addicted need to be treated medically, and it's a mental health issue and a physical health issue. So we need to make sure we have treatment available for addicts. And expanded Medicaid has been wonderful. 50,000 people in our state now have insurance through expanded Medicaid.
Are there any other thoughts you'd like to share before we go?
Well, yeah, I think one of the, I think a couple of things that we need to talk about that would be important is understanding, looking forward for New Hampshire. I think when I look at particularly young people like yourselves, I have, as you know, I have 4 children, one who has been out of college for almost for 4 years, one who is in, 2 who are in college and one who is in high school. And I want them to be able to be here in New Hampshire, live here, raise their families here. It's a terrific place to live and to raise a family. We have a superb quality of life. We want to maintain that. But I think that we are not going to succeed in doing that if we don't bring and keep young people in our state. We need to make sure that our demographic isn't left, that we have young people to care for us, if for no other reason. But we need to understand what would bring young people here. And I think certainly having quality K-12 education, affordable college with, so students aren't graduating with enormous debt. I think having a vibrant economy is essential, and the way to have that is to have a prepared workforce so businesses want to locate here. I also think rail will be essential to our well-being. I can't stress enough how important I think it is that we really take a close look at having the rail line from Boston through, I'd love to see it go to Concord, but certainly have it go to Nashua and then to Manchester. So I guess in a nutshell, I just think we as legislators need to be forward-looking and not dig in our heels and say no to everything, or say, well, that's not the way we used to do it. We need to be talking and having conversations with people at all walks of life, because I want to attract young people to our state, but we also are going to have to meet the needs of our senior population, and that's going to change, because as our senior population ages, and this population maybe, I think, will be living longer and probably living healthier than in past generations. So what do we need to do for those people as well? I think I read something that people born in 2000 will have, I forget what the percentage was, but a very good chance of living to 100. And you were probably born somewhere around 2000, and I think that's an important thing for us to be thinking about now, not waiting till then. Let's start thinking now. What's life going to look like if our population is going to age to 84, 85, 96, 100? What do we need to do for those communities now? What can we start thinking about?
Great.
Thank you so much for coming and talking with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Great.
so much for having me. I
Right.
really appreciate this opportunity.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.